Welcome to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. I'm your host, renowned sex and relationship coach Amanda Testa. And if you are looking to reclaim your sexual desire, take sex from a to-do to something you look forward to, and enjoy deeply connected relationships without adding more to your already full plate, then you are in the right place. Listen in to discover how to fan the flames of your feminine fire, fall in love with your sensual self again, and experience intimacy like never before, all in a way that feels really good to your system. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy the episode. Today on the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast, we have the pleasure of speaking with Jodi Kennedy, an extraordinary poet who has captivated readers with her bite-sized, thought-provoking poetry ever since October 2022. Jodi is an accidental creative writer and self-proclaimed incessant overthinker who has discovered the transformative power of words and self-expression, making her the perfect guest. Growing up, her beloved grandmother introduced her to the interdimensional art of storytelling, igniting a lifelong love affair with language. And this passion has led her to craft not only poetry, but also heartfelt greeting cards that help people express their love and gratitude for one another. We are celebrating her debut book, Clumsy Beauty, where Jodi vulnerably shares her experiences of navigating life's beautiful messes, offering a beacon of light for others on the path of self-discovery. Through her poems, she explores the link between creativity and personal growth. And also, we know, if you're a fan of this podcast, that tapping into creativity, our creative energy, also can help us connect with our feminine essence. And this is what we're all about here, empowering women and people to embrace their authenticity, trust their instincts, and boldly express themselves in all areas of life, realizing like we are more similar than different more often than not. And Jodi's words serve as a reminder that embracing our imperfections, feeling our feelings, and courageously sharing our truth are keys to unlocking greater freedom, confidence, and radiance. So thank you so much for being here, Jodi. I'm so excited to talk to you.
And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I have to say, we mentioned this before we started recording, but y'all, her voice is like a calming sedative to my nervous system. Listening for the past week to the podcast has been, I've never thought of myself as super feminine. And I think I'm starting to grow into that. And, with the writing process as well, kind of this, and listening to podcasts like yours has helped me kind of ease into that. I grew up with two big brothers. And so there was a bunch of masculine in the family.
Yes.
And we played sports and we fished and the guys went hunting and I went to Montana every summer. And so I think that I always tried to be a little more hardcore. And now that I'm about to be 39 and I feel myself kind of getting, pulled into this feminine undercurrent, which is weird, even just to hear myself say out loud. Like it's not something that I'm used to. And I think that writing has also totally helped with that transition, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I love your poems, and I think they beautifully capture all the aspects of life, right? The beauty, the messiness, all of those things. And I'm curious even how the creative process of writing, like how you started doing this, what led you to start writing poetry?
So I think you mentioned earlier that my grandmother was big on storytelling, and she was just like a huge presence in my life when she was still with us. I grew up every summer going to Wisconsin, and she would read stories. She introduced me to books. That's when I started, really gobbling up literature, and just, I loved the escape of it, which actually in my younger years, I would write a ton. And then you grow up and life happens and you put this like cap on that part of you that it comes so naturally. And then you start doing something else and you go to school and you get different interests and you are doing what your friends are doing. And then, you get a job and you get into your career, and maybe it's not the career path that is correct for you or whatever. There's always a time, and maybe not for everybody. I don't know. I feel really lucky that this happened kind of in a roundabout way. I went through a really difficult time. And so, sorry, just to back up, for 20 years, I didn't write anything. And then about 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago, I entered into this incredibly negative, tumultuous situation in my life. There was a terminal illness diagnosis for someone in the immediate family, my husband's mom. And I was in a very toxic work environment, and I wasn't happy where I was living, and I didn't feel like I had a community. And so at the time, I wasn't thankful for it. But looking back, I'm like, these things, these dominoes all fell the way that they did, because I knew in those horrible, horrible moments, I was like, oh man, it would be so easy for me to fall into every single unhealthy habit like that exists, whether it's drinking or shopping or, like writhing in bed, like all these things the roads that I could have gone down. And instead I was like, oh boy, a reality check. I need a healthy habit. So I just opened up the notes app on my phone, and in these horrible moments where I terribly depressed and incredibly paranoid and having panic attacks and shaking, and all of these horrible things were manifesting physically in me, I funneled it into my notes app on my phone. And, during times like that, when normal people would be just getting a therapist, I made an Instagram account and started posting this ick that I was feeling online. And it's funny, I was listening yesterday to your podcast about shame. I had those feelings. I was ashamed of how I was feeling, how I was reacting to things, and saying them out loud. Maybe not out loud, but writing them down. And the weirdest thing happened against all odds. People weren't grossed out by me. They were liking the material, and they were sharing it, and they were commenting on it. And it blew my mind that was kind of the reaction. And it was fascinating that we're all feeling the same. We all go through a lot of the same stuff. And there's this catharsis in sharing it and having people accept it and relate to it that is kind of unlike anything else I've ever experienced.
Yeah. Sounds like, having people being able to relate. And I think you're right. We often have similar experiences, similar emotions. That's the beautiful things about art, is that's a way we can come together.
Oh my gosh. Yes. It's amazing, the community that I didn't realize I had. And maybe it's just like an online community, but yeah, the sharing, like when somebody drops you a note that's like, oh my gosh, I've had this exact feeling. It's just, there's such a oneness that I think the world we live in today kind of is trying to stamp out a little bit and make us forget that we're all so much alike, right, in so many ways.
And I know you mentioned this too, because I think in general, often people have a hard time feeling their emotions or connecting to what emotion they're experiencing, right? Most of us we were never really taught emotional intelligence. So it's not something that a lot of people can easily connect to unless you actively kind of work to. And I'm curious too, just around like being able to feel your feelings and how the creative process helped you to do that more.
The writing is what allowed me to be able to do this. I have always been, at least for that middle chunk of my life, where I kind of got lost. I didn't let myself feel any emotions. I turned everything off immediately. I wouldn't let myself feel anything. I wasn't in touch with myself. And I'm still releasing myself from the straitjacket of my body that I created during those years and years of stress and bottling things up. And eventually the lid's going to blow off that, which is really what happened for me. I wasn't nurturing myself. I think is your thoughts. If you have too many of them, they go into your body and they calcify. And if you're not releasing it, you're going to get sick. And that's where I was 2 years ago. I was making my body sick with feelings. And so they had to come out. It was like I would sit down and write, sometimes embarrassing and shameful and over the top. Too much information is pouring out of me. And it needed to. And it was easier for me to do it on a keyboard than it was to, I can talk to my husband. I have that awesome, open But the terminal illness that was happening, it was like, I can't necessarily use him as a fit. Like, he's going through this. His mother is sick.
Right.
Like so it was just like, I need to have my own avenue to be letting these feelings out. So I think that my learning to do this was out of necessity. My body made me. Sometimes you just have to sit down and make noises. Like, you just have to you have to cry, and you have to groan, and you have to growl.
Yes.
And writing that, describing that, and the exodus of that stuff from you is relatable somehow.
Yes, it is. Well, because I think you're right. So many of us bottle up things, and it's true. Like, if we don't allow that stuff to express in one way or another, it's going to find a way, and it might not always be the best way. And so I think you're right. People appreciate realizing they're not alone in their experience, I think, right? Because they don't realize, like, it's normal to have these kind of distress responses. It's normal to like cry and wail and groan and scream and have a tantrum. We just don't usually give ourselves the opportunity to do that,
And that's not what we're seeing. Sometimes when we're around people that we aren't super close to, we are not showing that side of ourselves. We have a mask that we wear in public with our friends or with our family, and, we're chameleons to that. And then you have the presence of social media now, where maybe it's starting to get a little better, but my gosh, like, that is a complete farce of people's real lives. And, like, this is what we're seeing. We're training ourselves, many minutes or hours a day to be like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be like. This is what I'm, like, oh, these are how these people are feeling and acting. Like, this is how I have to act. And learning that social media is not supposed to be how we're functioning. So I guess I took the opposite route, and I just spewed my ick all over the internet, and it ended up being okay.
Well, I think that's too, right? Because as you share and have that, the people resonate, I'm wondering, how that has impacted your confidence and ability to share more.
No confidence. Total imposter syndrome still. If I'm being totally honest, I don't think it goes away, which I'm okay with. I have gotten a lot healthier in the last 2 years through the writing process and moving and being close to family and being in a place that I love and all of that, this healing journey that I have been on. But there are still the release of this book. I would love to tell you that I was super excited and confident, but I wasn't. And I am still not. Every friendly, supportive message that comes through, either online or on my phone or whatever it is still like, oh, thank goodness. I do need that validation. Until the book came out, I was still like, I still kind of thought it was a practical joke that this was happening to me. I was like, my poor publisher. A little over a year ago, when they first reached out to me over email, I was still in a very unhealthy, very paranoid, very anxious place. And there's all kinds of scams and stuff on social media. So when they emailed me and they were like, hi, we found your Instagram account and be very interested in publishing a book for you and blah, blah, blah. And I sent back some snarky, like, how'd you get this email? And how much is it going to cost me? And blah, blah. And they were like, no, in traditional publishing, like, we pay you. And so it's been like this ridiculous road of accepting the fact that somebody wanted to publish a book with me, which is, so anyway, like, very long answer just to say, I don't think I'm super confident still. And I think that that's okay.
Yes.
I think it's all right. Just to keep in mind that, like, this is a wonderful treat to get to do this. And I do hope that people love it and can relate to it. But I still don't know what anybody's doing with me here.
Well, I love it because, that's part of what the book's about, right? Embracing the imperfections, and even the title, Clumsy Beauty, which is such a great name, but it evokes embracing imperfection.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's, again, back to the social media thing. I think that there's a ton of pressure. I don't know how anybody's a 12-year-old right now. Like, I don't know how anybody is a kid growing up with these, like, completely, these aspirations of wellness or their bodies or anything. I can't understand how Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, they're looking at that and trying to have it's not
crazy. I have a 12-year-old. And so I'm constantly trying to navigate. Well, she doesn't have a phone yet or social media. I'm working on holding off as long as possible.
Oh, good.
My friends do. But they're very influenced by all that they see. And the fact that they're 6-year-old influencers, that is a problem. I feel like, honestly, I hate to say it, but I think it's true. Like parents who pimp out their kids on the internet, I think that is not okay. They're not old enough to have those choices. And so it always makes me mad and always has.
I know.
That's something that irritates me. So I won't speak too much to that. But the fact that, I think we just have to learn, even as adults, it's hard, right? These devices are made to be addictive. They're made to suck us in, and even the apps. And while there is beauty to it, I think what we have to do, like anything, right? There's a dark side and a shadow side to everything, but there's also a good side. And right, when we can share and see and find the good and the relevance and connect with people that actually really needed to hear that message, I think there was, it's important. And so I think focusing on that is how we can make it better.
Hey, it's Amanda. If you are enjoying the show and felt a connection to what we've discussed, and you're ready to take the next step in reigniting your passion and enhancing your relationships, I have something special for you. Visit www.amandatesta.com/thegoods, where you can subscribe to my email. And if you want, you can sign up for a free personalized sensuality discovery session with me. In this one-on-one heart-to-heart session, we'll explore your unique desires, uncover any challenges, and set a path for you to experience the vibrant, fulfilling love life you deserve. Don't let another day pass feeling unfulfilled or disconnection. Take action now, and let's start this beautiful journey together to fire up your feminine fire. Join me at amandatesta.com/thegoods. I'm excited to stay connected. Now back to the show.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if kids have the capacity to, and they don't. I don't think most do, to understand that, like, it took me 40 years to fully understand that my flaws and my imperfections and my isms and my attitude and my, like, neuroses, those are who I am. Like, that is what makes you the perfect individual snowflake that you are. Like, nobody else is like you, but those things that you think maybe are your flaws, that's everything. Those are the things that you need to dive into, you need to nurture. Those are the things people love about you. Right. And I don't know. And so when kids are looking at a world where they think that you have to have the, perfect house and the perfect body and the perfect, life, whatever. It's just not, it's the opposite message of what, needs to be out there for sure.
I'm curious, how giving yourself permission to embrace all your imperfections and really love all of that. What are some of the things that helped you?
Honestly, I think that maybe I'm just restating this, but it's the writing. It's the putting the ick on the paper and having people be like, oh my gosh, I love this. Like, those are the things that will connect you to people. Those are the things that are relatable. That is what, how. So I think that is, the writing is probably the main point for me, at least, about how, like, realizing that, like, oh my gosh, all of this is totally normal. All of this is the human stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. And, being creative and allowing that writing to help you, I'm curious if there's maybe an example or how, when you think about how it's helped you to alchemize some of this pain into strength and really help be a way to process. Maybe is there a specific example that comes to you, or maybe a poem that you really, really love that you might want to share?
Gosh, that's a hard one. I think that it doesn't have to be writing. I think it's creativity in general that is the conduit for healing. It is letting something come out of you. I always say, and anxiety has, like, I think I wrote a poem about this a few weeks ago. Anxiety has a million hands. And until you put something in every one of those hands, give your anxiety something to do. Give it a paintbrush, give it a pen, give it a camera, and let it turn into not necessarily productivity, but something that let it express itself. And if you leave it idle, then that's when it starts to manifest poorly inside your body. But being creative, I think, in any way is a huge part of letting the ick out.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, creativity is just an energy. It is. And it's something we have to nourish. And it just, like you say, it gets stifled because many of us have been taught like, oh, that's a waste of time, or it's not productive, or whatever the silly, untrue things that we have been taught. And I talked about this a few weeks ago. I did a whole 6-week series on sex, creativity, and power. And part of it was inspired because I just recently did the Artist's Way again, which is one of the reasons when your PR agent reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, because poetry, this is so beautiful because we do need an outlet. And like you say, all the things that we feel, it's often because we are not expressing ourselves in some way. We're not like getting the stuff out that needs to come out, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think that, well, again, back to, you just put a lid on all your feelings and all your emotions sometimes, and releasing it is actually what needs to happen to grow. And sometimes that means cutting people out of your life, or sometimes it means cutting pieces of yourself off, letting pieces of you die, like transforming yourself, letting yourself evolve, because stifling that can be super negative sometimes.
I think the other thing too about it is like presence and surrendering to the moment as being present. Creativity requires you to slow down and be present, right?
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I was thinking about this morning. Part of the self-prescribed healing journey that I have been on is slowing down. You don't realize how fast you're going until a couple weeks ago, I caught myself brushing my teeth and needing to find something else to do at the same time. Like I started cleaning the countertop with my other hand while I was brushing my teeth. And I was like, I am a crazy person. Like, brush your teeth, woman, just brush your teeth. And so that has been a serious issue for me. Rewilding myself has been, I always thought that wilding was impulsive and fast and running, but it's not. It's slowing down. It's listening to your animal. And it is,
yes.
Hey, it's fall, it's winter. Slow down, relax. We are supposed to be hibernating. So for me, it's been, don't do one thing at a time and be in the thing that you're doing, these mundane things that we hate doing in our everyday lives, whether it's, chores or work or email or whatever it is. Being there and letting yourself be in those things and being mindful during those tasks, it is a huge part of time passing more pleasantly, basically. And it's when you try to rip yourself out of where you are and be somewhere else. Like I used to, I remember acknowledging for the first time during a ton of anxiety, I wouldn't be able to make a decision about what to do next. So I would just do nothing. And then as soon as I decided to do something, as soon as I decided to work out or clean the house, I would decide immediately, oh no, I need to be doing this other thing. And it's like, I couldn't even be where I was. And I remember having that thought, like, I'm not present at all right now. And that spooked me big time. Oh my gosh, it scared the daylights out of me. I was constantly panicking that I wasn't where I needed to be, not where I needed to go. It was just so messy. So slowing down and being mindful of whatever I'm doing, in whatever moment it is a chore at first. But then as soon as your body starts to thank you for it, you're like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to feel like.
This is why I love teaching about pleasure, because it is so key. It's finding, and it reminds me, can I share one of your poems? Please. I think I have a hard time saying poem. I always say it wrong. My daughter's like, why do you say it?
I love how you say it. Oh my gosh.
But the memorizing moments, right? I think that goes to show, like, it says, can I read it?
Yeah, please.
I'm not saying it to test, but you'd be crazy not to study. Life lies about the importance of the final and lives in the moments you'll wish you had memorized.
Oh, can you do my audiobook? Oh my gosh, that voice Oh my gosh. It's so, so good. Forget the poem. I just want to listen to you read the dictionary.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think that I don't want to speak for most people. Me, myself, I constantly worry about things that never happen. And you're wondering about, where am I going to be in 5 years? What are my goals? And what is this? And it's just like, oh man, life is screeching by as you're worried about something that never actually happened. And I think that that's how a lot of people are living these days, when the moments that make your life, I think about this with core memories all the time. Like, how many core memories are you like, I didn't know I was living that moment while I was living it, but I am 40 and I am remembering this thing that happened to me when I was 10, but then I didn't know that that's what I would remember. Like, we might be having those moments every day and, we're not in them.
Yeah.
Which is a crying shame.
Right. And it's an active process of learning to just be, but it is life-changing. And I think that's the thing, is giving yourself that permission to slow down, grab a book of poetry and allow yourself to sit and read and let it land. I mean, we so often don't give ourselves those gifts, and it's such an important part of being alive, is to just enjoy and relish it. I think that's one of the sad things too, is just our culture has, not given art the credit it deserves in this day and age. It's maybe coming back more, but it's just such an important part, right? It's such an important part.
And being quiet too. I remember I was terrified to be quiet. I was terrified to be in a room that was quiet. I was terrified, I was terrified to be quiet with myself and now I sit for literal hours in quiet and am at home in my thoughts and in my body. And I'm so relaxed to be there and so thankful to be there. But man, there was a long stretch of time where the TV had to be on, or the music had to be on, or I had to be talking to somebody. I could not sit still and quiet. And that was a huge hurdle. And it's amazing what you start to hear once you start to enjoy being in that place. Like, you start to recognize your own voice again, instead of all these other crazy voices in your head, and in your environment. It becomes a pleasure, and it takes a lot of practice to get there. And it takes a lot of uncomfortable moments, like a lot of, oh man, yeah. And it's funny because this book of poetry is, I would say it's positive, and it's happy, and it is lighthearted, and there's some stuff that is, more angsty. But in the beginning, like, if you scroll all the way back in my Instagram, that's where I was 2 years ago, and it's dark. It was dark in there, and I remember writing some of those, more kind of moody things, and alone in the quiet, and this is what comes out. And it's your own voice calling you home, which is we get lost somewhere, or I was lost for a while, and you eventually listen to yourself calling yourself home and get comfortable with that voice, I think.
Yes, I think so. I'm wondering too, if there's any, if someone is listening and they are maybe feeling creatively blocked, or want to embrace more of that creativity in writing and finding ways to express, what advice would you give to them?
So this is my number one thing. I'm actually writing a guest column for Writer's Digest right now, which I hope goes well. But it's about how to get your engine running creatively. So 2 years ago, before I kind of started the writing process, I was gobbling up the news and political podcasts, all of this doom and gloom content and doom scrolling on Instagram and all of that stuff. And I don't remember what got me to do it, but one day I just decided to go in a completely different direction, change literally everything that I was consuming online, what I was listening to, what I was filling my head with. I completely deleted my podcast app. And I started downloading books. I think that I was just like, I need something that has nothing to do with anything, that is just interesting to me. So I downloaded I got on Audible, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is like an unusual thing, I think, to listen to or to choose, because there was no context. Like I just started listening to this on dog walks, and it plucked me from my crazed brain and it put me in a different world. And it's, again, back to the beginning of the conversation, it's the escape. Like it's what I used to use books for. It was escaping from my norm, from what I would normally listen to, and letting me escape into this other thing that got my juices flowing. Downloaded another religious book, and I listened to Marcus Aurelius, and right now I'm listening to The Raw Contact. I download weird things that I don't know anything about, and it makes you think about things differently. It just puts you in a different place, and it makes you curious. And curiosity is the fodder for literally everything. I mean, that is, like if I can get curious about something, like I'm on my way. Like I'm already getting myself out of, whatever dead end I had driven down. So
I love that. It's like following, it's tuning into what your desires are and following your curiosity. Like what do I want to listen to? And sometimes I think that when people feel lost, it's like, well, just what's something that sounds interesting? What's something that you would like to learn about? It doesn't matter what it is, right? And just how following that curiosity can lead you down a different path.
Yeah. And a different perspective. Anybody else's, like I don't agree or disagree. And that's another huge lesson about, doing this thing in particular, is like, I don't have to agree or disagree with the person or the book that I'm listening to. It just makes me think. And if you're thinking, then you're learning, then you're, you're making sense of things. And that's huge. And when you're just listening to a bunch of negative fear-mongering stuff all the time, which is what I was doing, basically, you get stuck. You create your own cage in your brain that you can't get out of. And so, yeah, the going down as many different paths is that you get something that you wouldn't normally listen to, it's a good way to break out of if you're feeling plugged up, kind of.
I love it. And I'm wondering too, if there's any last minute things you'd like to share, if there was a question that you wished that I would have asked that I didn't ask.
Oh man, I guess I would just love to touch on the fact that we're all so much more similar than we have been led to believe. I started this Instagram account 2 years ago, and it has grown in 2 years to thousands of people now. It's not too many that I can't keep up with who's following me. So I'll look at a profile and it might seem like, oh, I have nothing in common with this person, but here they are sharing a very personal feeling that I had. And I just think that the world has gotten really good at separating us. And I think that is the antithesis of how things are supposed to be. We're all incredibly connected. And sometimes picking up a book of poetry can remind you of that, at least. It can remind you that we're all here together sharing a ton of that same human experience.
I love that. Thank you so much again for being here. And can you just let everyone know where to get your new book of poetry and how to stay connected with you?
Yeah, for sure. Clumsy Beauty is available on every major online platform. So Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart. So you can order online at any of those guys, or you can just Google it and that will take you to where it is. And then my Instagram account is JK Kennedy Wright. And then that's also my website. So the link to the book is also on my Instagram and also on the website.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much again for being here, Jody. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And I love your poems, and I will be excited to share the book too, because if anybody's out there is listening and you want to dive into some pleasure, then I would encourage you to just give yourself permission to get this book of poetry and just enjoy, create a lovely nook for yourself, get a nice cup of tea or whatever you love to drink, and just enjoy it. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And we will see you all next week. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. If you loved this episode, please go ahead and forward it right now to someone you know would love it. And if you've not had a chance yet to leave us a rave review on Apple Podcasts, please make sure to rate and review if you enjoyed it, as well as make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Want to stay connected? Make sure to go to amandatesta.com/thegoods to download your free sensuality activation and stay connected. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.